when people like, and it's faster anyways. Like, why are we trying to figure everything out on our own when we could just ask the guy in the next cubicle that probably knows more than we do on any given subject that we're trying to figure out? Why don't we just ask that guy? Maybe he can help us. We can get, now, a lot of people don't do that, probably because of a lack of psychological safety. So if they ask that guy, now they're admitting that they're stupid. And so I always said, well, why not just ask the guy and just figure it out? Ask a mentor, ask a coach, ask somebody that knows more than us, so we can figure it out faster. We can make progress faster. We can win faster. Everybody makes more money faster. It just makes all the sense in the world to me. So what do you say about that? Am I close here? Or?
Total, absolutely. And I would point to two things there, that what you're talking about. The first is being vulnerable. So as a leader and as a manager, as a business owner, you don't need to have all the answers. You aren't going to have all the answers. And yet often, especially for folks who get promoted into a management position or a leadership position, we suddenly think, oh, well, as the leader, we need to have all the answers. That's, I think, a folly. And the first thing you want to do as a leader or manager is think, how am I facilitating outcomes within this team? That is my role. My role is to facilitate this unit, this group of people, to produce better outcomes. And so rather than me have all the answers to tell them, instead, I want to think about how I can have them come up with the answers, and quite frankly, even just the questions. And that requires some amount of vulnerability where you need to be able to say, I don't have all the answers, but let's work on this together, and we're going to do this together. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing I want to point to, Daniel, is norms. Norms. You probably have the experience of working in most people have that experience, unless you've been an entrepreneur your whole life, where you go into a new work setting. And what do we start doing? We start going, if I have a problem, who do I talk to? And how do I raise an issue like this? Who do I go and ask? And when can I go and ask them? Do I write an email? Do I put it on chat? Can I just walk to their desk and ask them, right? These are all really powerful norms that different work environments have. And even if they're not explicitly written down somewhere, they start to naturally form. And we as humans are really good at looking for those norms and following them. And they're super powerful. And so if no one in your work environment is going, oh man, I don't know how to do this, I'm going to go ask Sheila over there in the next cubicle. If that's not happening on a regular basis, guess what? No one's going to do that. So part of building a psychologically safe work environment is to create explicit norms around how we share information, how we can reach out to one another, how we're going to work together as a team, because those norms are really powerful. And that little voice in the back of our head that's saying, shut up, Daniel, you're not smart enough, is powerful, right? And if we let that little voice control our behavior, then we aren't going to share information. We aren't going to speak up. We aren't going to go, I think, why is the boss suggesting we do that? This seems like a terrible idea to me. You need to be able to say that.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. I mean, I follow Ray Dalio. Do you know Ray Dalio?
It rings a bell, but no.
He is you should study him, because what you're talking about is very similar to what I've learned from him throughout the years that I've been following him. He's the #1 hedge fund manager in the history of the world, basically, or at least the United States. I know you're in Canada, but for the United States. And this guy has produced amazing returns. I think his hedge fund is Bridgewater. And but if you just type in Ray Dalio, Dalio, he wrote a book called Principles. And one of the things that he had talked about is the fact that the reason why his hedge fund, he believes, has been so incredibly successful is because they literally sit in a room and everybody has a little iPad, and they click on their iPad when they're listening to somebody talk about something. They click on, do they believe it? Do they not believe it? Do they think it's a good idea? Do they think it's a bad idea? And there's kind of like a feeling of everybody has to just speak their mind, and everybody gets a certain percentage of sounds good, doesn't sound very good. but everybody feels comfortable to speak up because everybody has to go through that, right? But they come up with the best ideas. Like it's almost like what's that? That show? Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? When they ask the audience, and if you collectively ask the audience, usually it's like 98% comes back and picks B as the answer or whatever, versus them trying to figure it out on their own. The audience, I've never seen the audience be wrong before. The audience collectively is always right. So it's like when you can be in a workplace, I don't know if I'm right on, talking about this the right way, but when you could get an audience of people all collectively say, hey, this is the right answer, now you're talking about everybody wins. Everybody does better when we all feel like, hey, I'm just going to say it how I feel it, even though I'm wrong, even though I messed up, even though I said something stupid. We're all getting better because of my input. If I didn't give my input, now we don't have that algorithm saying, what's right and what's wrong. And so I think it's kind of I don't know, for me, being a business owner for now 27 years or something like that, and leading big teams. I have 1,500, our organization is 1,500 people and like 50 locations now, 52 locations now. And I think through the years, for me at least, I always was very vulnerable with our agents. And I always told them things like, look, I ain't the smartest guy. I don't know everything. I make mistakes all the time. I screw up things all the time. I remember always telling my new recruits, like, look, I'm going to make mistakes. So don't take it personal. When I make a mistake, don't take it personal. But if I make a mistake, I promise you that there's nobody that will be more genuine and authentic and honest that's going to try to fix it. If I make a mistake, I'm going to fix it, and I'm going to say I'm sorry, and I'm going to apologize for it. Ain't nobody going to do it as good as I can do that. But I promise you, I'll always do my best, and I'll always, so anyways, I always had that little talk with them, and I feel like there was always a good, beginning conversation that we can have that established that kind of trust. So what are some of the things that you would recommend to leaders and people that are building teams out there that maybe they can do to kind of open up and foster better trust and better relationships with their teams?
Yeah, great question, Daniel. So to answer that question, I want to point to the work that we're doing around interpersonal skills training and the research study that we're currently conducting. So we are drawing from information and studies and research that's been done in the world of counseling. So if you look at counselors, what are they trying to do? They're trying to work with an individual to have that individual take on a new perspective on life and achieve better outcomes for themselves personally. So it's an alliance to build better outcomes. As a manager within a team, what are you trying to do? You're trying to take a collection of people, have them embrace new perspectives and ideas, and create better outcomes for themselves. So I think the parallel there is like surprisingly similar, even though you're not at all a therapist or a counselor as a leader or team manager. But let's just, consider those parallels. Now, what do they know about the best counselors in the world? And they've looked at not just counselors, but social workers, all these different helping professions. And they asked the question, what makes all the best ones? Because if you look at social workers, counselors, even religious leaders, et cetera, there's some that are great in producing outcomes for their clients, and there's some that are not. And what's common among all of the best ones is that they have these interpersonal skills that this one individual out of Ohio State University calls facilitative interpersonal skills. And so what he did is he created this very clever study where he took a bunch of video clips of actors depicting the exact scripts from real live sessions. And he took the most challenging moments that you might have in a counseling session. And he had a half dozen, actually only four of these clips of challenging moments in a counseling session. And then he had students record their responses. So what would you say to this person? And these were students that hadn't gone through their training yet. Then they measured their results, their client outcomes years later, and it was predictive. So how they performed in this one performance task predicted how they would do with clients later down the road. And these facilitative interpersonal skills basically amount to two things. There's 8 dimensions that they look at, but there are 2 that we think are like the real critical core components. Number 1, it's empathy. The ability to understand other people, the ability and willingness to put yourself in someone else's shoes to see their perspective. So that's the first thing. And the second is what we call interpersonal responsiveness, IR, interpersonal responsiveness. And what is that? It's the ability to approach uncomfortable moments, especially some sort of rupture between people. So when someone makes a mistake, when someone makes a comment that might cause another person to be upset, if you can approach those situations with grace, and this is what we do a lot of the training on, then we think those are the real skills that lead to great outcomes within a team. And that's what we're studying at the moment. So again, it's empathy and this interpersonal responsiveness. You don't sweep it under the rug. You don't pretend like it didn't happen. You approach it, and you approach it in a constructive way so that you're not just laying blame and pointing the finger. And it sounds like that's, even though you maybe didn't break it down like this, you were doing that. You're saying, especially about that interpersonal responsiveness, look, I am going to make mistakes. Don't take it personal. I will apologize, and when you do make a mistake, you apologize, you repair it. What are we going to do differently? That is a skill that I think is highly valuable within a team environment.
Thank you for watching our short clips on Alonzo Academy. If you'd like to watch the next short clip, click here. If you'd like to watch the entire podcast, click here.